Part 125. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1241. Zhou Manchang's genealogy is still over in the end. The repaired genealogy will be paid to the ancestors. After everyone worships the incense, it is even told to the ancestors. Then the village chief will take the genealogy home, and the others will carry the chickens and ducks on the case. The sheep went back to Lao Zhou's house to cook. After the ancestors finished eating, it was their turn to eat. The old Zhou family borrowed a lot of tables and chairs, and the two courtyards could not fit, so they were placed on the road outside the door. Not only the villagers of Qilai village, but also the in-laws of the old Zhou family also came. Lu Xianwei, who was temporarily acting as the magistrate of Lujiang County, also came. Of course, he didn't come for nothing, and he also brought condolences. Zhou Yin was posthumously appointed as the prefectural shepherd, not only in Qilai village, but also in Lujiang County. Although he had a good reputation and had no practical benefits, he felt that Mianzhou might have to send officials over there. Condolences. So he wanted to erect a monument at the entrance of Qilai village to record Zhou Yin's affairs, but Zhang Zuzu reminded him before he came, and then he remembered that the Empress Dowager was still there. Although they are in Lujiang County, the emperor is far away, and they may not be able to know about the big people in the capital who are engaged in some activities, but they are not afraid of 10,000, just in case they are not. So he held back. However, the Zhou family had a good relationship with the magistrate Yang, and they also neutralized the rebellion of the king of Ping'ai prefecture. Now that magistrate Yang has returned to the capital, the Zhou family may really soar into the sky in the future. In addition, the Zhou family's financial contribution to Lujiang County in recent years has also been quite large. After many considerations, Lu Xianwei decided that the monument can be temporarily not erected, but the relationship cannot be left behind. So he brought his subordinates and came here with consolation money. For their arrival, the old Zhou family welcomed them very much, arranged them and Master Bai in the seat, and then started the seat in a lively manner. Aunt Qian took Qian's hand and whispered in the room, "Okay, okay, your hard days are finally over, and you don't have to worry about it in the future." She smiled and nodded. "I said the same thing, thanks to the elder brother and sister-in-law for helping us cover up these years. Otherwise, Man Bao's life experience could not be concealed from his relatives in Qinjia village." Aunt Qian smiled and said, "Do we still talk about this between our sister-in-law and sister-in-law? By the way, Man Bao's birthday is coming soon, she is also 13, should we say kiss?" She smiled and said, "It's all right, but the 6th is not married yet. She is also like a child. I don't need to worry about it, let's leave it for a few more years." "That's right," Aunt Qian followed her, worried, "why hasn't the 6th child of your family said kiss? If you delay it any longer, you won't be able to get a daughter-in-law in the future." She also sighed, who said no, but he is in the capital at the moment, and I can't talk about him. But my father and I have discussed it. When he comes back, he will have to say kiss and marry a daughter-in-law before leaving. Aunt Qian became worried. De Tiu is also in the capital, and he is also old. The big head is her own grandson, so she is still very worried. When she thought of the big head, she thought of De Ya. "By the way, I heard that you are going to kiss De Ya. It's not someone else's house either." She motioned for her to look out. "The eldest grandson of the resident is also studying. I've seen it before. His personality and appearance are all good." Aunt Qian's brows and eyes relaxed, she bent her eyes happily, and said with a smile, "This marriage is good, this marriage is good. Is it bad? The chief of the ward is usually only the middle-aged and elderly people who are well respected in the township. The elder's home is between the two. He has grown up in the village for many years, and now he doesn't walk when he goes out. He relies on people to pull it with an ox cart or push it with a trolley, but no one can replace him. When there is a problem in the village chief is usually contacted first. If the village chief cannot solve it, then the Li chief can be called. Generally, except for major cases of human life, the Li chief cannot be in charge, and basically all matters can be resolved by the Li chief. Therefore, the Ri chief still has a lot of power. It's not as good as being in charge of the county officials now. In the past few years, Lao Zhutu never dreamed that he would be able to marry the elder's family. Qian said, everything else in their family is good, except that they have few brothers, 2 sons, and only 3 grandsons in total, but they all know the bottom line, and his family is considered harmonious. Not to mention, we can also take care of it. Aunt Qian nodded, that's the truth. It's a pity that Urdu and Arya, who are of the same age, are also in the capital. The remaining few are still young, and they are not yet the age to say kisses, so the aunt and sister-in-law stopped talking about this year's harvest. At this time, Bai Shan in the capital just pulled out a small horse from a carriage and horse shop. He listened to the treasure and led the horse back down the street. After walking for a while, he saw a small alley, but he didn't go in, but stood at the street and waited for her. Man Bao was stumbled by Mrs. Han. Today, she rests and doesn't need to go to Ji Shitang, but today she wants to leave for good fortune, so she went to early Elaine to check Fu Wenyun's pulse, mainly to tell her what she had inquired about. Then the two of them hid in the room and whispered. When they were healthy, Fu Wenyun finally found the unsightly folds on her stomach, so Man Bao recommended the ointment to her. In order to prevent her good friend from being trapped by the shopkeeper Zhengde, she made a special trip with Kaiyu, and finally bought the ointment for Kaiyu, and was blocked by Mrs. Han before she could go out. She came to find Man Bao on purpose, or for her sister's sake. Mrs. Han said, Miss Zhou, my 5th sister is nearly 8 months pregnant. I wonder when you will have time to take a look. Man Bao thought about it and said, tomorrow, you can let her come over. Mrs. Han paused and asked, can't Miss Zhou go to Yangzhou to see a doctor? It's not very far, you can go back and forth in a day. Although Man Bao had never been to Yangzhou, he knew the distance, because Dr. Ding had gone to Yangzhou's outpatient clinic and said that he could go back and forth in one day, which must be because it took no time to see a doctor. She said, I need to sit in the semi-paradise here in Ji Shitang, unless it is an emergency, so I'd better ask Han Wu Niang to come over. Also, since it's been almost 8 months, she should be about to give birth. Isn't Mrs. Han coming to me because I once delivered a child to the Yu family's daughter-in-law in Songza Lane? Mrs. Han's brows twitched. It was because of this that she found Man Bao. Otherwise, if they went to see a doctor, their family could afford an imperial doctor, and Ms. Wen could touch the fetus. In fact, there were not many people who needed Man Bao. Man Bao said, it is impossible for me to leave the capital and go to Yangzhou to live for several days, so for the convenience of later production, I still have to invite Han Wu Niang to come over. Madame Han hesitated for a while, then nodded, okay, I'll send someone to pick her up today, and I'll invite Miss Zhou to see the doctor tomorrow. Man Bao said there was no problem, and asked her to send someone to pick her up at Ji Shitang tomorrow. You can come here around noon. She still doesn't know where Mrs. Han lives. See you at 8 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1242. After finally sending Mrs. Han away, Man Bao hurriedly ran out to find Daji. Let's go to my 5th brother's restaurant. Daji didn't quite understand what to do there, but he drove out of the inner city anyway. Man Bao jumped out of the carriage and waved to Daji, Daji, go back and take Bai Shan and Bai Er and the others over. I'll treat them to dinner today. Daji. He lifted his eyelids and glanced at Man Bao, before getting back into the car and leaving after a while. Man Bao breathed a sigh of relief, put the medicine box on the counter, told Zhou Lejun that he was going to go shopping, and ran out. The street where Baishan is located is not very far from here. Man Bao quickly ran over, the two joined, and Keek checked them and let them in after confirming that there was no one in the alley. The two led a pony to the depths of the alley, and Man Bao asked, "How much is this horse?" 29 taels, 1 tael left. Man Bao smiled and said, "I'll bring it here to invite you to eat later." At the location where the horses were recorded last time, Keek made sure that no one could see them, so he recorded them in front of Baishan. The pony disappeared in front of his eyes, and even Baishan, who had already experienced it, was also amazed, and then hesitantly, he bowed to the place where the pony was standing, and called out, "Uncle Joe." Man Bao. She grabbed Baishan's hand and pulled directly out of the alley. "Stop, salute," he rode away. "Baishan, did you take the horse to ride? Otherwise, it's not for eating, right?" Baishan scratched his head. He didn't know what to do with it, and it seemed that it would be good to ride it. The two walked out of the alley holding hands, and people on the street couldn't help but glance at them more. Man Bao felt that something was wrong, and he had to let go. Baishan grabbed it, turned his head to one side, pointed to the stall on the street with red ears and asked Man Bao, "Look, there is a lot of food." Man Bao's face was also slightly red. He nodded, and stopped drawing his hands. After walking for a while, the heat on their faces and ears subsided, and finally they heard all kinds of hawking sounds on the street: silk, bright and beautiful silk. Cotton, soft and snug cotton. The two of them turned their heads to look, only to realize that this small half-street was all selling fabrics, not food at all. Baishan couldn't help turning his head to look at Man Bao. The two of them looked at each other, turned their faces away, and walked back hand in hand with flushed faces. Seeing old Joe's restaurant from a distance, Baishan reluctantly released Man Bao's hand. Man Bao blushed and held his hand in front of him, just staring at the front. Neither of the two said a word. After walking forward for a while, they felt that someone was staring at them, so they looked up together and glanced around when they saw Daji standing at the intersection of the street and looking at them. Baishan and Man Bao. The two of them were quite guilty, and the redness that had just faded on their faces had a tendency to come up again. Baishan coughed lightly, glanced at Man Bao and stepped forward. "Daji, why are you here?" Daji sighed inwardly, sighing that the young master has grown up, but his face did not change much. "Master Tang and the others are here, I will come out to pick up Man Bao." When Daji was taken away, he thought that Man Bao was going to do something quietly, but only when he returned to Changqing Lane did he find out that the young master was not at home. So after he picked up Bai Erlang and the Xiang brothers, he rushed over immediately, for fear that they would encounter danger outside, but they avoided him just to go shopping together. Daji glanced at their hands, stepped aside and said, "Master, Miss Man, let's go up." The two of them blushed and nodded. Bai Erlang and the others were already sitting in the box. Seeing the two of them came in with blushing faces, they turned to look out the window and asked, "There is no sun today, why are you blushing so much?" Baishan asked, "Have you ordered food?" "What are you ordering?" "It's not in another restaurant." "What do we eat on Saturday, brother?" Bai Erlang was very well supported, and then turned the topic back. "Where did you go in the morning?" "I want to ask, I can't find the article you wrote after you helped me polish it, and finally I asked big brother Xiang to help me polish it." Xiang Mingxiu, who was sitting beside him, nodded with a smile and said, "The writing is not as good as Baishan's, but it's barely readable. By the way, it's uninvited, Dr. Zhou, isn't it strange?" Man Bao shook his head. "Of course it's not surprising, you should have come out more to relax." She said, "It's a pity that the Queen Mother's illness has been repeated, and Imperial Dr. Zheng and the others can't find time to see you. Fortunately, we are also dealing with fluid accumulation and body maintenance, so we are not in a hurry at this time. Xiang Mingxiu nodded. Bai Erlang's attention was finally diverted. He turned his head and asked Xiang Mingxiu, "Brother Xiang, if your legs are better, what are you going to do?" Xiang Mingxiu was stunned, and after thinking for a while, he said, "Go back to your hometown, the ancestral hall has to be repaired, and the people who followed me to take revenge are nowhere to be found. It happens that I have a lot of fields in Dongzi Chuang, and I will divide some of them at that time. Give it to them, and live and work in peace and contentment." Bai Erlang was a little disappointed when he saw that this plan was mediocre. Bai Shan asked, "Then don't you marry a wife and have children?" Xiang Mingxiu smiled and said, "Of course I want to marry a wife and have children. It is impossible for me to go to school and examiners in my life, so I want to open a school in Zhuangli. If I can be half as good as Mr. Zhuang in the future, I will be satisfied." Bai Shan said, "Then we will send you some books. Teaching requires a lot of books, not for students to read, but for teachers to read, so that students can be taught well." Man Bao said, "I can ask my eldest brother to send you some wheat seeds. The new wheat seeds from our village are very good, and the yield is much higher than ordinary wheat." Xiang Mingxiu smiled and said, "I've heard of it, so thank you very much." Bai Erlang looked left and right and asked, "Then what can I give?" Bai Shan rolled his eyes and said, "You give them some cattle? The cattle can be used for farming. They have less people and more land, which is just right. A cow is 3 or 4 taels, so expensive." Bai Erlang is a little reluctant. He is not the magistrate of Yang, where is so much money. Man Bao also thought of something, and nodded again and again, "Yes, send the cow. You can also write this paragraph into the book. You and brother Xiang have such a good relationship, and it happened to be written for others to learn." Bai Erlang's eyes lit up, thinking that he could also appear in the book, not just on the cover of the book, so he nodded again and again, "Okay, I'll round up a whole number, brother Xiang, I'll give you 10 cows, all right." Bai Shan and Man Bao nodded in satisfaction, their eyes met, and they both squinted. Xiang Mingxiu. Jolie brought up the food. "Sister-in-law, Uncle Six said that he marinated the jar of fish. Do you want to bring some back to eat?" Man Bao refused. "Forget it, brother Six's cooking is not as delicious as sister-in-law's cooking." Jolie's Hong felt the same way, so he nodded, "Okay, I will sell it to Yazoo merchants who pass by. They like to bring jars of vegetables on the road." See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1243. After the group returned home, Man Bao went into his room to operate the system. There were already bids on the forum, and there were more than one party, but horses were big and important, so they were not so easy to buy. Therefore, Man Bao did not think about meeting their requirements. After all, it is too troublesome to record once, and once people are suspicious, it will be very troublesome in the follow-up. Keek thinks so too, so the two only plan to find the one with the highest price to trade. Horses were a means of transportation in ancient times. People in the forum felt that as long as they had money, they could always buy them. Therefore, the competition was not fierce at first. All received at the price of the first horse. Although it is now the era of flying machines, the speed of horses is really not worth mentioning, but they still like this kind of creature that has been highly respected since ancient times. I like it more than I like those flowers and plants, so there are many people who post prices in the forum. This surprised Manbao, who had been wanting to splash some water in the forum, but not even a drop of water. For the first time, he felt the feeling of fire. In the past, she posted a post 1 second ago, and it sank to the bottom of the page the next second. If she was not careful, she would be sunk to the bottom. She and Keek took great pains to let people see her sold posts. After an hour, Keek will go to the post to post a message, and re-up the post a little bit. So that the institutes or researchers who want to buy various plants can see that sometimes no one buys the extra plants that are included, and the two will send a selfish message to those who have worked together before. But now, since her post about selling horses has been posted from the bottom of the page to the top page, it ranks 5th, and has not been withdrawn until now. For a moment, Manbao was very excited about the proposal of the person under the post, and she secretly calculated an account. One horse was 1.28 million. If she received 10 horses, it would be 1,280. 100,000. With this point, she and Bai Shan will not be afraid of drowning once a month. But soon, she knew the idea was risky without Coco reminding her. Although privately bought horses do not need to be registered like cattle, if they are in large quantities, they will still be noticed by the city ordinance that manages the market. 10 horses is already a lot after all. This is a war preparation material. Purchasing separately is more attractive, because this kind of thing is problematic at first sight, and there are only 5 car dealers in the entire capital, which means that even if she and Bai Shan work together, they have to run in every market. Just once. Not to mention that Daji is not a fool. Even if Daji doesn't doubt it, they will be noticeable when they run to the carriage and horses more often. The two of them are not unknown juniors in the capital now. He is still very confident in his own fame. So she could only give up the idea with regret, and then told those who encouraged her to buy more horses, "I can only include one. Who do you want? I'll bid first." After the forum was quiet for a while, it all exploded. Most people felt that Manbao was deliberately raising the price, but this kind of thing is normal in the forum, so everyone is still working together to reduce the price. DRD has already quickly bidding said, "I will pay 2 million, you give me the horse." As soon as the building came out, other people were unhappy. One of the landlords directly downstairs said unhappily, "Is this maliciously raising the price? We are still negotiating the price. What price do you set?" "More than 700,000. DRD ignored them and asked Manbao directly, "Will you give it?" Others don't know, she doesn't know. After all, after working together for so many years, she bought most of the things that Manbao produced here, and the two of them communicated in private. They could be regarded as friends, but she knew that the host of this animal and plant recording system, well, she has a bit of ability. She is weak and not very good at lying. Since she said that she can only include one, it must be only one. Seeing the familiar ID, Manbao immediately smiled and replied, "Okay, I'll give it to you." When everyone saw it, it was absurd that the dust had settled down like this. Someone immediately said downstairs, "Host 0531, you're asking for a price too fast, haven't we made an offer yet?" "That's right, I can't confirm the order, I'll pay 2.2 million. Someone started, and everyone didn't hesitate for a moment whether it was maliciously raising the price, and they followed behind to bid. DRD had already sent the order to Manbao. Although Manbao was drooling at the bid under the post, he still clicked the confirmation on the order. The forum immediately announced that this order has been completed. The buildings under the post were quiet, and Manbao felt very embarrassed, so he specifically explained in the building, "DRD is my regular customer, I think the price is very reasonable, and there will be a new inclusion target next time, I'm sorry to tell you again." So polite. Zhonglu was stunned for a moment, and then they glanced at the name behind the system number, which was very unfamiliar and seemed to have never appeared on the forum. DRD quickly handed over 2 million to the main system for supervision, and then he had time to return to the forum. After seeing Manbao's reply, he returned to Manbao with a smiley face, and then said to everyone, "Don't make a bid." Well, this landlord usually doesn't walk people. Zhonglu was surprised, there is still such an honest system host. Having traded with Man Bao for many years, DRD, who is familiar with many, has secretly guessed that Man Bao is very young, although there is no evidence. However, being able to hold the system in his hand has led to such a dull life, and it is the only one among the hosts that DRD has come into contact with. Man Bao sent the included horses to DRD, and he received the points in a short while. She happily looked at the total points of the system, and said to Keek, "The next thing is cows and sheep. It's hard to harvest cows, but sheep are not too difficult. I'll buy them for you when I'm free." Keek also just drew a point. Seeing that he had reached the upgrade line, he was almost able to update it, so he also gave Manbao a smile. Everyone is happy. The next day, Manbao went to Ji Shitang to see a doctor with a good mood. At noon, he was taken to Li's house and saw Hanwu Niangzi. That's right, it's Li's house. Naturally, this Li residence is not the family of Hanwu Niangzi, but the family of her husband's uncle, Li Maoyu, the Minister of Officials. Originally, Mrs. Han wanted her to live in the Han mansion, but the Li family asked Li Maoyu's family to help take care of her, and Li Sanlang, the husband of Mrs. Han Wu, also came over, so Mrs. Han couldn't force it. But she was there today, and she came to the gate to pick up the treasure. Originally, Mrs. Han wanted to bring Manbao to visit the old lady and the wife of Li's house. This was according to the process of visiting guests. Manbao felt that it was too much trouble. She came to see a doctor, not a guest. If she had to see her every time she went to the doctor, how much time would it take? So she declined. Mrs. Han took her directly to the yard where Mrs. Han lived. See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1244. Wu Niangzihan was sitting on the couch. Because of the cold, she was already surrounded by fox fur, and the brazier was still lit in the house. As soon as Manbao entered the house, she felt a wave of heat rushing towards her face. Manbao paused before following Mrs. Han forward. Mrs. Han smiled and introduced Manbao to everyone. It was with everyone, not only the two wives of the Li family, but also Mrs. Li San, and Li Sanlang, the husband of Mrs. Han Wu. The room was already hot, and with so many people gathered together, Manbao felt even hotter. However, she glanced at Hanwu Niangzi, who was still wearing fox fur, and said nothing. She nodded to everyone, then turned her head and said to Xiao Xiao, "Take out the pulse pillow, Wu Niangzi, I will give you a pulse first." Everyone still wanted to chat with Manbao, so as soon as they saw her coming in, they started seeing a doctor, so they didn't bother her, so they stood aside and waited. Xiao Xiao immediately took out the pulse pillow and set it up. Manbao showed Hanwu Niangzi the pulse and asked, "How long have you been pregnant?" The grandmother on the side replied immediately, "It will be 8 months in a few days from the diagnosis made by the imperial physician." Manbao glanced at her huge belly, also a little worried, got up and said, "Let's go into the inner room to check." Hanwu Niang nodded slightly, and the mama immediately helped her to get up and go to the inner room. Handa Niang pleaded guilty to everyone and followed in. Most of the girls in the inner room retreated, leaving only a close-fitting maid of Hanwu Niangzi. She and Mammy brought in 2 braziers, and only then did they start to undress Hanwu Niangzi. Manbao asked while washing his hands, "Miss Han, are you afraid of the cold?" "Yes," Wu Niangzi replied in a low voice, "I've been afraid of cold since I was a child, and it's even worse when I'm pregnant." Mammy said, "My wife's hands and feet are cold as soon as winter comes." Manbao nodded, knowing that she was uncomfortable lying on her back, so she asked the maid to put a pillow on her back and let her lean on the pillow, then rubbed her palms and touched her stomach. Hanwu Niangzi was obviously not only afraid of the cold, but also of pain. When Manbao pressed down, she frowned and shrank slightly, and then she felt pain. Man Bao frowned and asked her many questions in a low voice, but it was not her who answered the questions, but the mammy and the girl beside her. Man Bao also knew that in big families, these wives and young ladies probably didn't know as much about their own bodies as these maids. It's just that the question of whether it hurts can't be answered by my mother. Man Bao touched her stomach and returned to the original point. Wei Wei pushed her stomach hard and asked again, "How do you feel when I push like this?" Mammy was about to answer again, but Man Bao looked up at her and smiled, "Let Wu Niangzi speak." Wu Niangzihan paused and said, "It hurts." "How much pain, can you bear it?" Wu Niangzihan gritted her teeth and said, "Yes." However, Man Bao saw sweat on her forehead. It was obviously in severe pain. Man Bao's hand didn't hurt, and he continued to push it forward. Han Wu Niang couldn't help screaming in pain, and his face turned pale. Madame Han stepped forward anxiously, "Miss Zhou." Man Bao let go of his strength and gently massaged it. Han Wu Niang exhaled softly, and felt much better again. At this time, Wu Niangzihan's bulging belly moved, and the child in her stomach kicked it twice. When Wu Niangzi saw it, she laughed out loud and said to Man Bao, "Look, doctor, the child is kicking me." Man Bao sighed inwardly, but nodded with a smile on his face, "Yes, the child is very lively." Man Bao put his hand away, put his tunic on her, pulled the quilt to cover it, and said, "Han Wu Niangzi, you should rest first. I will discuss the prescription with your husband and sister, and I will show you later." Han Wu Niangzi was stunned for a moment and then asked, "Why, do I still need to take medicine?" She glanced at her eldest sister hesitantly and asked, "Didn't you come to deliver me?" Man Bao nodded, "We also need to do some preparations before giving birth." After that, she got up and nodded to Mrs. Han, and turned to go out. Madame Han said to the maid, "Take care of your wife." After he said that, he went out, and the mammy quickly followed. The people in the outer room were waiting while drinking tea and chatting. When they saw Man Bao and the others came out, they stood up with a smile and asked, "Have you seen it? How is it?" Man Bao smiled and nodded to them, looking at Mrs. Han, "Miss Han, shall we find a place to talk?" Mrs. Han really didn't want too many people to know about the little girl's situation, so she nodded and said to her brother-in-law Li Saburo, "Let's go to the study." The two wives of the Li family were stunned and asked with a smile, "How do you say this? Isn't this little Dr. Zhou to see if the fetal position is right, and then go back and prepare for the delivery?" Li Sunyang grabbed the two sisters-in-law and said with a smile, "Let them go. The sister-in-law just said she wanted to give me a taste of the new tea that the house just bought, which happened to be cheaper for me." The two wives of the Li family quickly woke up and nodded with a smile, "All right, if you like it, I'll pack a little more for you later." Man Bao went to the study with them to talk, just two maids, Mrs. Han and Li Sanlang. As soon as the door closed, Man Bao said straight to the point, "Han Wu Niang's situation is not very good. First of all, the child is too big. I touched it around, the child's head circumference is very large, and her pelvis is small, the fetus is not positioned correctly, with the child's head on it." The two maids on the side nodded together. One of them was a mama who specialized in taking care of Han Wu Niang's childbirth, and the other was a midwife invited by their house from Yangzhou, and her craftsmanship was very good. But it's not the worst is that her pain nerves are more sensitive than the average person. Madame Han asked, "What is this?" Man Bao squeezed out a needle and gently stabbed it on the back of his hand. "That's right, ordinary people will only feel a sting when stabbed with this needle, but she can feel as if it was stabbed with a knife. It hurts, and the pain will last longer. It's natural," she said. Mrs. Han and Li Sanlang nodded together, "Yes, yes, Wu Niangzi has been particularly afraid of pain since she was a child." Man Bao said, "So, even if my hands are small, I can straighten the fetal position in my body, and I can find a way to make her have such an oversized child. She can't give birth, because she is in too much pain and she can't bear it. Madame Han turned pale and asked, "What can I do?" Man Bao frowned and said, "Actually, there are two ways, but I haven't tried it, so I'm not sure." She said, "One is to directly open the abdomen to take the child, and the other is to prepare medicine to make her less painful." Mrs. Han and Li Sanlang said without thinking, "Choose the second one." Man Bao shook his head and said, "The one I'm least sure about is the second one. In comparison, I suggest you choose the first one." Madame Han widened her eyes and asked unhappily, "How do you say that, Madame Zhou? When you were giving birth for MRSU, you didn't want to open your belly to take a baby. How come you came to my sister's place, but you putting my sister's life at risk?" Miss Han misunderstood. "Even if I open the abdomen to take the child, I will give priority to ensuring the safety of the adult's life," Man Bao said. "The open abdomen I said did not cut the abdomen directly with scissors as the woman said." See you at 8 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1245. Manbao will try not to operate on patients if they cannot operate, nor does he recommend that patients use knives, not only because of the pain of the skin, but also because they are not like the error written in medical books. There is safe anesthesia, and good health. Anti-inflammatory drugs. Here, broken skin is easy to cause inflammation. But the situation of Wu Niangzihan is really bad. Her belly is too big. Whenever the child is younger, she will find a way to deliver her, but not now. Man Bao told them about the situation, and then said, "The laparotomy I said is to make an incision here with a knife, and then take out the child and then sew it up." Madame Han shook her head. No, no, what kind of medicine do you think makes Wu Niangzi not very painful?" Man Bao sighed and said, "It's an anesthetic, but I've never done it before. This drug is more dangerous because it's never been used before, and even if it can ease her pain, it's hard for her to give birth to the baby. If you don't believe me, you can ask Granny when in the capital, or ask an imperial physician." She said, "Second sister Fu's situation is much better than her. Although the fetal position is not correct, the child is not very big. Second sister Fu is also of sufficient size and has a suitable pelvis, but Han Wuniang's body is small and her pelvis is also small. The child is too big. It can be said that Han Wuniangzi is a collection of all unfavorable factors in production." Madame Han looked ugly and looked at the two maids beside her. The faces of the two maids were also very ugly, and they were a little trembling, but they couldn't help nodding under the watchful eyes of Mrs. Han. When they were in Yangzhou, Mother Wen and Mammy watched it, but they felt bad, so they reported it to the master. Then the Li family not only invited a doctor, but also specially came to Beijing to ask an imperial physician to visit, just because they have vaguely expressed that the situation is not very good, and the Han and Li family are in a hurry. And there was a lot of rumors about Man Bao delivering Fu Wenyun's birth some time ago, and Mrs. Han just wanted to look at her. Before that, she also invited the woman Wen from the capital to ask, only then did she know that Zhou Man's hands were small and long, which would be of great benefit in midwifery. In the words of the mothers, if she became a midwife, she would not be able to do so in the future. Must be number one. But the premise is that her hands can't grow any longer. But she did not expect that Zhou Man would propose a caesarean section as soon as she came up. Don't talk about Mrs. Han, even Li Saburo doesn't want to. Man Bao also knew that they would not be able to make up their minds about this kind of thing for a while, and they didn't force it. Instead, they warned, she's making up too much during pregnancy, so she has to control her diet a little bit, don't go hungry, but don't overeat, and it's best not to take supplements. The grandmother on the side immediately said, it stopped more than a month ago, and now it is a normal 3 meals a day, plus some snacks. Man Bao nodded and sighed, then I'll go see her again. She wants to collect her data. This is the first time she has seen a patient in this situation. Now she has no shortage of points, so it doesn't feel bad to scan at all. Manbao decided to go back and compare the scanned data with the results of her diagnosis to see if her pulse-taking technique had improved a little. In the end, Manbao still didn't give her a prescription, but he touched her belly and tried to correct her fetal position until she turned pale. Madame Han watched it silently, and then sent Manbao to the front yard, and even to the carriage. Manbao stopped beside the car, turned around and asked, "Miss Han, if you have anything to say, just say it." Ms. Han opened her mouth and asked after a while, if there is an abortion. Manbao shook his head. Abortion at this time is more dangerous than giving birth to a child, and the child is already 8 months old, so having an abortion at this time will hurt heaven and earth. It is really difficult to give birth, and when you need to protect the big and the small, you will say another thing. Now that everything has not happened, it is impossible to have an abortion. Madame Han frowned and thought for a while, and after a while, she said to Manbao, "Miss Lao Zhou is here today." She turned to look at the girl beside her. The girl immediately took a nice-looking purse and stepped forward. Madame Han took it and stuffed the purse into Manbao. Manbao took it, nodded to her and got in the car. After thinking about it, Manbao still lifted the curtain and said, "There is still time. If I can, I will find a way to put her in the correct fetal position." Ms. Han's eyes lit up, and she bowed to Manbao and said, "Then there is Ms. Lao Zhou." When Xiao Xiao saw that they had finished speaking, she also got into the carriage, and the driver of the Li family would take them back to Ji Shitang. Because the driver was outside, Xiao Xiao didn't speak. He didn't ask until he entered the clinic of Ji Shitang, "Dr. Zhou Xiao, I think you are not in a good mood. Is Ms. Li's condition not good?" Manbao sighed and said, "It's more than bad. I'm so old, don't talk about it, I've never heard of such a bad case." After thinking about it, Manbao still put down the medicine box and went to chat with Dr. Tao. Dr. Tao has done some research on this aspect. Maybe there is a way to do it? After listening to Manbao's story, Dr. Tao shook his head and said, "No, I'm afraid I can't keep the size of this situation." He frowned. "The fifth lady of the Han family? I have seen her before, but it was infertility. She is small in size, she should pay attention to her diet after pregnancy, how can she eat such a big child?" Manbao shook his head. "The mother who follows her knows a lot, and she should know this, but it's still the case. After all, it's a big family, so I can't ask in depth." And the Li family and the Han family didn't decide to ask her to see Han Wu Niangzi. After all, the method she suggested was not good. Dr. Tao sighed and asked, "Then are you still going?" The doctor also wants to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. Han Wu Niangzi's situation has been seen at a glance, and it is obviously not going to work. If the involvement is too deep, I am afraid that the two families will be blamed in the future. After thinking about it for a while, Manbao said, "It's natural, I want to see if I can straighten her fetal position, so I can get more vitality, right?" Dr. Tao thought it was difficult. The fact that the child was too big was enough to kill him. He had seen Han Wu Niangzi before. She was 20 years old. She didn't look at her face. After sending Manbao away, Ms. Han immediately went back to look for the nanny and Ms. Wen who were serving by Ms. Han Wu's side, and asked, "Is what Ms. Zhou said true?" Mammy and Granny Wen looked at each other. Granny Wen didn't like to talk, so Mammy hesitated. "The situation is a little bad, and the imperial doctor also mentioned it before." Madame Han raised her eyebrows and asked, "If you deliver the birth, how likely is it that the mother and child are safe?" The two of them did not dare to speak. Li Saburo, who was on the side, was angry when he saw it. "What does this mean? Do you really want Wu Niangzi to have a caesarean section?" The keyboard was so dirty, so I disassembled the keyboard, and I didn't expect. Forget it, it's life. Next update at 11:30 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1246. Mammy and Granny Wen both lowered their heads and did not speak. Madame Han's eyes flashed, she sat down and took a sip of tea and said, "Forget it, let's ask the imperial doctor to take a look." Li Saburo also nodded quickly. He didn't believe what Zhou Man said about the cesarean section. He felt that his wife was in good health, and any dystocia was too alarmist. Mrs. Han did not delay. She went home and told her father that day. The Han family specially invited the old Dr. Tan to come, and Mrs. Han also brought a nanny to the door the next day. Han Wu Niangzi was stunned when she saw the old mama. "Han mama, why are you here?" Mother Han smiled and said, "This old slave heard that the fifth lady is back, so I came to see you." Mammy Han sat down on Wu Niangzi Han's feet, looked at her towering belly and smiled. "Wu Niangzi is going to be a mother too." Han Wu Niang's face softened a lot, and smiled, "Yes, he will be born in 2 months, and I don't know if it is a boy or a girl." Mammy Han took the opportunity to laugh and said, "Why don't you let Mammy touch you?" Han Wu Niang's eyes lit up and nodded repeatedly, "Okay." Mammy Han smiled and checked the fetus for Mrs. Han Wu. Although she felt a little uncomfortable every time, she still cooperated with Mrs. Han, but she did not expect to check it for Mrs. Han, and another one came at home. Imperial physician. Han Wu Niang frowned, looked at Han De Niang and said, "Eldest sister, didn't you say that Dr. Zhou Xiao was scheduled to deliver the baby? Isn't that little genius doctor's medical skills not bad? Why did you hire an imperial doctor?" Mrs. Han said, "It's the old Dr. Tan. Father doesn't worry about you. He specially invited it. Do you want to see it?" Han Wu Niang knew about the medical skills of the old Dr. Tan, and this was invited by her father, so she quickly agreed. When they were all finished, Mrs. Han asked the mama and the maid to stay with the fifth lady. She invited the old Dr. Tan to go out, and Mrs. Han, who was standing by the side, also quietly retreated. This time, not only Mrs. Han, but also Han Shangshu and Li Shangshu were there. The two Shangshus sat on the top, one on the left and one on the right, while Li Sanlang stood at the bottom with his head bowed. As soon as the old Dr. Tan came in, Han Shangshu stood up and took 2 steps forward, and Li Shangshu also got up. After the two sides bowed, they sat down to talk. Han Shangshu was a little anxious. Seeing that the old doctor didn't speak, he said, "Old Tan, we have been friends for many years. If you have anything, you can tell me. You know me, and there must be no blame." The old Dr. Tan looked up at him, shook his head after a while and sighed, "Didn't your family also invite a mammy to see him? Why don't you ask her first?" Han Shangshu looked at Han Mammy. Mammy Han took 2 steps out and was about to kneel down, but Mrs. Han quickly supported her. "Mammy, what are you doing? How dare us juniors be so polite to you?" Han Shangshu, "Yes, Nanny, if you have anything to say, just say it." Mammy Han sighed and said, "Master, Grandma Wogu is afraid that this child will not be born." Li Sanlang's face turned pale, and he looked at her in shock. Li Shangshu was also surprised, and hurriedly looked at the old Dr. Tan. The old Dr. Tan frowned and said, "Child, it's too big." Mammy Han added, "And the fetal position is not correct." Han Shangshu's face changed, and then he asked, "What if it was Lord Bao?" Li Shangshu instantly returned to his senses, and quickly said, "Yes, yes, Lord Bao, it doesn't matter if the child is gone, it will be reborn in the future, Saburo, don't you think?" Li Saburo resisted his tears and nodded. But the old Dr. Tan did not speak. Mammy Han got a little closer, and whispered, "But the child is too big, and he won't be able to get down after being knocked out. It's been almost 8 months, and the child can already live." The old Dr. Tan said, "And this medicine is fierce, I am afraid it will bleed a lot." Han Shangshu sat down on the chair and stopped talking. "So after all that, the adults can't keep it?" Li Shangshu stopped talking, just looked at Han Shangshu with concern. After a while, Han Shangshu asked with difficulty, "Then, keep a child?" The old Dr. Tan lowered his eyes and said, "It can only be done before the child has an accident. If you can't give birth, you can only open the abdomen to take the child. This kind of thing, not to mention the hospital, even the doctor at home will not say it, because such a conclusion is equivalent to a death sentence." If Han Shangshu hadn't brought out the friendship between the two families, the old Dr. Tan would not have said it. "And Han Ma, she has served 4 generations of masters, she is very old, everything is for the Han family, naturally she has something to say, there is no need to avoid too much." Li Sanlang's eyes were flushed, and he finally came back to his senses. He shook his lips and asked, "No, isn't it just having a child? It's a big deal, we don't want children anymore, why can't we keep the 5th lady?" Mother Han said, "Eating too much is too good, and the child is too old." Li Saburo collapsed directly to the ground. Han Shangshu patted the table angrily and asked, "Wu Niang doesn't understand how the people who serve you, so don't they understand? How do you feed people like this?" Mrs. Han was also very angry, but she glanced at her brother-in-law and knew that it was not his fault, because the couple had quarreled several times before about the food, and it was Wu Niang Han who insisted on eating. Her Gong Han is frail and not easy to conceive. It took only 3 years of marriage to conceive this child, so she is very precious. When she was in Yangzhou before, her mother-in-law reminded her to eat less, and she also sent a nanny to take care of her. But I don't know why, after Han Wuniang was pregnant, she had a big appetite, and it was fine if she didn't vomit. She still ate well, slept well, and was especially hungry. The food is even better. People like them are not short of money. Naturally, she can eat whatever she wants, and her stomach grows like a blister. The mama who served her has persuaded her several times, and even her mother-in-law has spoken to her several times, but Han Wu Niang may have been sensitive at the time, or it may have been because of years of repression. Li Saburo was in a dilemma between his mother and his daughter-in-law. At the same time, he felt that her belly was too big, so he persuaded him a few times, and the couple quarreled several times. Han Wu Niangzi also went back to her parents' home for this reason. But Mrs. Han didn't take it to heart at that time. She really realized that it was not good because the Li family sent a letter to them from the Han family and asked the imperial doctor to look at it. Although the imperial doctor came back and said something vague, but the situation was not very good, they still heard it. Later, they wanted to ask the imperial doctor to see it again, and the imperial doctor in the imperial hospital found various reasons to refuse. Everyone is a human being. They all know what this means with their toes, so Mrs. Han became anxious and began to rush to find a good woman and a good doctor. "See you tomorrow, I will continue to repair the keyboard, and I can't press in without 3 keycaps. It feels strange to tap the red switch directly." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1247. Madame Han was also a little flustered, remembering what Zhou Man said. She gritted her teeth and asked, "Old Imperial Dr. Tan, if you open your abdomen before giving birth, will you be able to save the adults and children?" The old Dr. Tan frowned slightly. "Do you mean to take the child out and sew up the stomach?" Madame Han nodded. After thinking about it for a long time, the old Dr. Tan shook his head and said, "This is not easy. Although Ma Fei San can be used, Han Wuniang has a child in her womb, and it is too dangerous to use Ma Fei San, and there are not many people who survive after opening the abdomen. Will Sujian survive? Li Sanlang immediately said, since he can, Wu Niangzi can naturally also. The old Dr. Tan pondered for a while and said, it's still a little different, and no one in the capital has ever done such a case. Open belly is always taken after the pregnant woman has died, because it is more acceptable for both the dead and the living. At present, let alone the entire capital, even in the entire history of medicine, there is no way to take a child while a pregnant woman is still alive, and it is guaranteed that a person will survive. Madame Han said, Miss Zhou said she could give it a try. Han Shangshu heard the words and looked at her. Mrs. Han gritted her teeth and told a few people what Zhou Man said yesterday, saying, she said after reading Wu Niang that she couldn't give birth to a child, there are only two methods that can be tried. However, Han Shangshu was moved by the second method, and looked at the old Dr. Tan, if there is that kind of medicine that can relieve pain. The old Dr. Tan shook his head slightly, it is very dangerous to use drugs that have not been used, or anesthetics. Like her, I think that if you choose the second method, you might as well choose the first one. He said, speaking of which, she is the one who is the most powerful in laparotomy in the capital city. It's a pity that Imperial Dr. Fan is not in the capital. Otherwise, if the two of them cooperate, the success rate should be higher. Han Shangshu asked, is it the genius Dr. Zhou Xiao who treated the Empress? Madame Han nodded, it's her. Han Shangshu pondered. The old Dr. Tan got up and said, this may be a silver lining, but don't hold out your hopes too much, after all, it's her first time. Han Shangshu personally escorted the old Dr. Tan out. On the way, he still couldn't help confirming again, is it really impossible to protect the fifth lady? The old Dr. Tan shook his head and said in a low voice, the child is too big. You see, she is not fat at all compared to before, but her belly is so big. Where did all the food she eat grow? After eating, the fetal position is not correct, Lao Han, as long as there is a possibility of your relationship with me, I will not tell you this. That week is full. The old Dr. Tan said softly, don't look at that child, she has talent in medicine. To be honest, I have seen many people in my life, but a medical book like her can be understood by just reading it once, and she is the first, and I am afraid she is the only one. Those people in the Thai hospital think that she is only good at acupuncture and moxibustion, and takes advantage of her status as a woman, but those who have worked with her know that she has a wide range of knowledge, no matter what method she uses, she can cure people. Good way. The old Dr. Tan said, I don't want to talk about it from a distance, just say that the queen's concubine's qi disease and yin or's frailty, I have seen both of them, and the wonderful prescription is not under me. Han Shangshu said, you are too good for her. The old Dr. Tan is famous for his medical skills in the capital. He has accumulated it all his life. He doesn't believe that Zhou Man can be compared with the old doctor in terms of prescription at a young age. The old Dr. Tan smiled and said, that child always has some wonderful ideas and walks calmly. This is much better than me, so this is not an exaggeration. Han Shangshu took it in his heart, and after sending him away, he went back to find Li Saburo. Although the Han and Li family were very reluctant, Mammy Han and the old Dr. Tan said so, and they could only put their only hope on Zhou Man. Han Shangshu asked Mrs. Han, can you be respectful to others when Zhou Xiaoshen doctor came to see a doctor yesterday? Madame Han said, Father, don't worry, we are very respectful. She is different from ordinary doctors. After all, after she is a hero, we will not neglect her. Han Shangshu nodded, then go and invite someone tomorrow. Let's have a good talk with her. By the way, don't tell Wu Niangzi beforehand. Several people nodded together. Then Mrs. Han glanced at the hourglass and said, Father, yesterday Zhou Man said that he would come to help correct the fetal position today. She usually doesn't visit the doctor until afternoon. Li Shangshu said, in that case, you can have lunch here, and we will wait slowly. Han Shangshu nodded, all right. At this time, Man Bao was writing the treatment plan of Han Wu Niangzi in Ji Shitang. After she went back yesterday, she took out the case and discussed it with Mr. Mo. Mr. Mo was very interested in this case. I am more interested in Xiang Mingxiu. Because in the future, there will be very few people who are self-conceiving, even if there will be various cases of difficulty in childbirth. For a case like Han Wu Niangzi, Teacher Mo can't wait to see it with his own eyes. He seems to be very interested in having children. After reading Han Wu Niangzi's data, Teacher Mo said without thinking, with the medical level you have, she will surely die. Man Bao, so how do I save her? It can only be delivered by caesarean section. In such a physical condition, if we are here, the housekeeping robot will remind her that it is not suitable for self-conception. Even if she is pregnant, the hospital will transfer the embryos, which is a pity. Man Bao pulled the topic back, but I'm afraid Ma Fei-san will affect the child, and I haven't had a caesarean section, and I don't have any anti-inflammatory drugs, so there are a lot of problems. Therefore, the two teachers and students discussed from the afternoon to the evening, and from the evening to the late night. Man Bao also consolidated the exercise and massage methods for correcting the fetal position. She has been learning this all the time, but she rarely uses it. Now that she needs it, she will review it. In addition, Man Bao also generously bought 2 more female anthropomorphic models, intending to use them to practice. As a result, she has 3 male anthropomorphic models and 3 female anthropomorphic models L. Man Bao felt the feeling of spending so many points, which was very refreshing. As for the anesthetic, Mr. Mo couldn't do anything for a while, but he said he would help find a way. In fact, Man Bao wants to buy their anesthetics directly. She has seen Teacher Mo use them in the simulation classroom. It is very convenient. She wears a wristband on her hand and presses it slightly, and the wristband can intelligently inject anesthesia according to the condition of the human body. However, that thing is not sold in the mall, nor is it a teaching material, so Man Bao can't buy it. Man Bao sighed while writing the treatment plan. Before finishing writing, Xiao Xiao opened the curtain and brought Shi Dalan and Lu Niang in. Dr. Zhou Xiao, Shi Dalan said he has something to do with you. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1248. Man Bao raised his head to look at the door, and saw Shi Dalan pulling Lu Niang to look at her with a timid smile. Although it was not time for them to check, Man Bao still smiled, put away the things on the table and said, "Come on, please take a seat." Seeing that Dr. Zhou Xiao was not unhappy, the couple breathed a sigh of relief. Shi Dalan immediately helped Lu Niang come forward and let her sit down first, which explained why they came earlier. Dr. Zhou Xiao, Lu Niang, how many? She vomited more and more every day, and she couldn't eat anything. I thought she was pregnant, and she had a dream of having a baby. Lu Niang nodded again and again, blushing and said, "We also know that the days are short and it is difficult to diagnose, but these days, the appetite is not good, and when I see the food, I want to vomit, so." Man Bao expressed understanding and motioned for her to stretch out her hand. She took the pulse carefully, and they didn't just look at the huamai, they looked, heard, asked, and cut the pulse. Man Bao carefully looked at Lu Niang's face and asked her some more questions, so she was 80% sure that she was pregnant. Of course, she didn't make a judgment easily, but invited Dr. Tao to come and see. After seeing it, Dr. Tao smiled directly at Shi Dalan and Lu Niang. "Congratulations to both of you, it is indeed a joy." The eyes of the couple were bright, and their hands couldn't help but hold together, almost hugging each other. Dr. Tao looked at Man Bao with a smile. "Congratulations to Dr. Zhou Xiao too. Man Bao is indeed very happy, after all, It is his own patient, isn't it? She smiled and said to Dr. Tao, happy together, happy together. Dr. Tao took the opportunity to say, let's discuss this case when we eat. The excited Shi Dalan was a little reluctant, and whispered, Dr. Zhou Xiao, you said you wanted to keep it a secret for me. Man Bao nodded immediately, don't worry, I won't reveal the patient's information. If they knew it, what could she do? Dr. Tao coughed lightly, Shi Dalan, your daughter-in-law's reaction is a little big. You can't go on like this. How can you keep your child if you can't eat? After a while, I will discuss with Dr. Zhou Xiao and prepare a recipe for you to go back to eat. It was only then that Shi Dalan remembered Dr. Tao's ability, and he didn't even bother to say, Dr. Zhou Xiao, if you tell Dr. Tao about my illness, it's okay, but you can't tell others, Dr. Tao, you see we have to eat. What kind of medicine? I don't know if she can take medicine, she is vomiting when she smells something. Dr. Tao is much more proficient than Man Bao in protecting the fetus. After he carefully instructed him, he discussed with Man Bao a prescription to give to Lu Niang. In fact, I asked for Man Bao's opinion, and the main recipe was prescribed by Dr. Tao. Man Bao glanced at the prescription, and after sending the couple away, the two discussed the various situations of miscarriage protection with the prescription. When it comes to the diseases that he is good at, Dr. Tao is also eloquent. The two went to the backyard while talking. They were talking while eating, and they were talking after eating. If Xiao Xiao reminded him, Man Bao almost forgot to go. Li's house went to the doctor. So she could only say goodbye without a word, and plans to continue discussing with Dr. Tao tomorrow. Dr. Ding, who had been speechless for a while, watched Man Bao leave, and then turned to ask Dr. Tao, why did I see Shi Dalan lining up to get medicine when I came here just now? Didn't his medicine stop? It was only then that Dr. Tao remembered that he had never had time to talk to Man Bao about Shi Dalan. He slapped his forehead and said, she has been distracted by these words, Shi Dalan's illness is cured, and his daughter-in-law has been diagnosed with pregnancy. It's a pity that I couldn't check his pulse just now, but Man Bao seems to have shown him. Dr. Ding's eyes lit up, really cured. Dr. Tao nodded, what are you doing to lie to me? I have memorized Shi Dalan's pulse case before, so I don't know what Dr. Zhou Xiao's specific medication is. I'll ask her when she comes tomorrow. Dr. Ding nodded again and began to pick up the patients in his hands, thinking about whether he had rare or serious patients recently that he could take out and discuss and learn from Dr. Zhou Xiao. Man Bao didn't know anything about this, so she took Xiao Xiao to Li's house. It was Mrs. Han who picked her up and sent her directly to Mrs. Han's room. Man Bao touched her pulse and said, from today onwards, I will help you correct your fetal position. It will be very hard and painful, but for your own sake, it is best to endure it. Han Wu Niangzi had long known that her pregnancy was too large to give birth, but she didn't know how serious it was. Therefore, her emotions are relatively stable, and she knows that it is difficult for women to give birth, so she is still obedient in this regard. Man Bao asked her to spread a blanket on the floor, then helped her to kneel and began to teach her the correct posture. It's just that her belly is a little big and she doesn't exercise often, but just at the beginning, she felt so bad that she couldn't lie down at all. Man Bao didn't force it, just put his hands on her stomach and waist to comfort her gently, and gently taught her how to breathe. Madame Han and a few maids stood by and stared blankly. Don't talk about Mrs. Han, it's the first time they have seen such an action. Soon, Wu Niangzi shouted in surprise, and several people hurried to look. Man Bao held her down and said, keep this position and don't move, you can take it after a while. He moved. I know, Man Bao said, he is adjusting his posture. Han Wu Niang, who was very afraid of the cold, finally broke out in a thin layer of sweat, and was still a little out of breath. Man Bao helped her up and said, don't always sit and lie down, Walk more. Granny Wen and Mammy Li, who was serving her, immediately stepped forward to support her and wiped her sweat off her clothes. Madame Han looked at the audience and asked, "Is this all right?" Man Bao shook his head, "Wait for her to rest, I'll give her a massage later to see if I can lead the child to turn around again." Madame Han glanced at her surrounded sister, and whispered to Man Bao, "Miss Zhou, my father wants to see you." Han Shangshu wanted to hear Man Bao's abdominal opening plan in person. As soon as Man Bao heard this, he knew that they must have asked others, and at this time, he was very inclined to her proposal. So, she asked Xiao Xiao to take the book from the medicine box and directly open it to explain the steps of caesarean section to several people, which can help Han Wu Niang avoid the risks and its dangers. Han Shangshu saw that she even considered things like Han Wu Niang's best not to have children in the future, and the strictness of her plan was far beyond Han Shangshu's expectations. He asked, "These are all things that Zhou Xiaonian came up with in one night?" Man Baodao, "There is another morning. Except for the patients who are in the clinic, I am writing this morning." Li Shangshu, who was beside him, asked, "If Lady Zhou comes to open her abdomen, how likely is it to keep their mother and child safe?" See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1249. Man Bao was silent for a while and then said, "If you take it all together, it's 30%. This possibility is very small, but it is better than the old Dr. Tan who directly concludes that there is no possibility." Li Saburo, who was beside him, was very haggard. He asked, "If you open your belly to take the child, is it possible to only protect the adults?" Man Bao immediately said, "If only the grown ups are to be taken out of the belly, then I have a 60% to 70% certainty." This was a bit beyond everyone's expectations. Han Shangshu asked suspiciously, "Shouldn't it be that the child's survival rate is a little higher?" Man Bao shook his head, "If you don't want to have an abdominal surgery, it's impossible for you to have an abortion to protect the adults, but if you are willing to open the abdomen and only ask to protect the adults, then I can use a lot of medicines. When it boils, I will dare to take a sufficient amount." Han Shangshu and Li Shangshu. The two of them understood at once. Both of them hesitated, and Li Sanlang on the side immediately said, "Then protect the adults, father-in-law. If the child is gone, it will be gone. In the future, I will take a concubine and give birth to a child and carry it to Sun Yang's knees." When Han Shangshu heard this, he sighed and said, "All right, that's it." But Mrs. Han said, "Miss Zhou, if possible, please try to keep the child as much as possible." She said, "For this child, Wu Niang has suffered a lot. If she knew that the child could not be saved, she still didn't know what to do." Man Bao nodded, "I will try my best." Then it's time to discuss what to do. Of course, it is impossible for Man Bao to do such a big event alone. She wants to ask the imperial physicians for help, but she is not sure whether the Han family and the Li family can accept the imperial physician into the delivery room. The Han family and the Li family are not so pedantic, and their lives are at stake. What else can they do? However, Mrs. Han felt that they felt nothing, and I was afraid that Mrs. Han didn't agree very much, so she asked, "Miss Zhou, didn't you do it? If that's the case, why don't you let the girls serve you, and the imperial physicians help outside the door?" Man Bao asked, "How many imperial physicians can your family invite?" Madame Han looked at her father. Han Shangshu said, "In addition to the old Dr. Tan, there is also a Dr. Lu." Man Bao nodded and said, "Okay, I see, I'll see if I can ask the doctor girl for help, and then I'll ask Han Shangshu to come forward and ask the two imperial doctors to discuss it." On that day, everyone should discuss everything in charge, and she also wanted to ask the two imperial physicians how they usually deal with such diseases. If the operation goes well, there will be follow-up treatment, which is also very important. Then, she had to prepare various things for the operation, and the Li family and the Han family also had to prepare some medicines. Man Bao's little head began to plan, and then listed a series of things first. For example, if she needed an empty room, she didn't need anything in it, so she put a wooden couch where the patient could lie down, some tables and chairs just fine. These things can be prepared slowly, as well as various medicinal materials, but she decided to go back to discuss with teacher Mo later, and then go to Dr. Tao and the others to discuss. She is full of fighting spirit now, but the mood of the Han family and Li family is not too high, because the success rate she gave is too low. But apart from Zhou Man, they had no choice, because no one else even had her success rate. Man Bao did not massage Han Wu Niangzi anymore. Since she was about to open her abdomen, there was no need for her to suffer that much. However, she still asked her to do those corrective actions the next day, and also instructed Ms. when and explained it. Check out the precautions and make sure they learn before leaving. It's always good to exercise more, and this exercise is also good for her body. It was Mrs. Han who sent Man Bao out. This time Mrs. Han didn't pay her the consultation fee, and Man Bao didn't care. She is now familiar with the ways of these high-profile families, and she knows that they will not treat doctors badly with money. Man Bao asked Xiao Xiao to take her home directly. She first went to the stable to develop a relationship with Qiji, fed him a handful of beans, and then returned to the house and put down the bookcase to go to Mr. Zhuang to listen to the class. Today is her time to study a new text. After she finished learning the new text and finished her homework, she went back to the house to find teacher Mo. Mr. Mo has more time and resources than Man Bao. He gave Man Bao several recipes, all of which were anesthesia recipes. He said, "These are all found in ancient books. I'm also doing experiments, but I don't have many of the medicinal materials used here. You can find a way to buy them and send them to me, and I'll see the effect of the experiment." He said, because some medicinal materials have been annihilated in the long river of history, these medicines are not entered into the system of anthropomorphic models, and it cannot give you medication advice. "But I've never heard of these herbs," Man Bao replied to teacher Mo while looking at the recipes in the mailbox. "I've memorized all the names of the medicines, I've never heard of these." Teacher Mo didn't expect them to be there either. After being silent for a while, he asked, "Then give me your prescription for anesthesia, and I'll find someone to discuss your prescription." Man Bao responded, and after thinking about it, he wrote 2 recipes. One of these 2 recipes was obtained from Imperial Dr. Fan, and it was basically the one commonly used in this era, but the dosage was just the amount. Another one was found in the history of the development of traditional Chinese medicine in the encyclopedia. It is said to be the most effective traditional Chinese anesthetic prescription that has been passed down from ancient times and has been verified. Of course, teacher Mo also knew the prescription, and he recommended Man Bao to read the book back then. He asked, "Do you have all the herbs in this prescription?" All Man Bao had researched, and although there were 2 drugs with different names, she still found them. She originally planned to use this anesthetic for Xiang Mingxiu's hamstrings. Teacher Mo was very satisfied and said, "I'm short of 4 medicinal materials here, and we don't have them here. You can find them for me. It's not easy to do experiments there, so I'll do them." Man Bao responded and wrote down the name of the medicine he sent. Teacher Mo kept sending information to Man Bao, and the system rattled. He said, because of the lack of medicinal materials, the data on the effects of these medicines have not been entered into the anthropomorphic model, so the effect of these medicines on pregnant women and fetuses cannot be determined for a while. Have you decided to have a cesarean section now? The patient's family has agreed. Then there are more things you have to do at this moment. Teacher Mo also felt that the main system had too many restrictions, otherwise he would just give Man Bao an anesthesia bracelet, so why worry about it now? Unexpectedly, their biggest obstacle was not intraoperative or postoperative, but preoperative anesthesia. After Mr. Mo sighed, he continued the topic just now. What I'm sending you is an information on acupuncture and anesthesia that I found in an ancient book today. You can take a look. The record is not very detailed, but this technique is 20 a non-drug anesthesia commonly used in the 2nd century for detoxification, cancer pain, rheumatic pain, including depression. Next update around 11 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1250. Man Bao was amazed. I know that acupuncture can relieve pain, but it only relieves pain, not enough to achieve the effect of anesthesia, right? It's not possible, but if it is combined with medicine, it will work better, said Mr. Mo. I asked a few colleagues to study today, and we all felt that combining acupuncture and moxibustion can reduce the use of anesthetics, which is beneficial to maternal and children are very well protected. You should study the information I sent you first, and ask me if you don't understand. By the way, buy me the medicine first. After speaking, he couldn't help but said, Man Bao, you can't just focus on studying medicine, medicinal materials are also plants. Since you are the host of the plant system, why don't you include all those medicinal materials? That way, I have researched it here. You can buy it directly, and you don't have to mail it. Lest you have to listen to her talk about the expensive postage. Man Bao justified himself, those herbs have been concocted, and I have included the active ones. What can I do about the inactive ones? She said, I'm also working very hard. If you don't believe me, ask Keek. I have always told shopkeeper Zhengda that the herb collectors should send some live herbs in, but the Jishitang in the capital will directly import the prepared herbs. I don't accept bulk medicine at all, and pass it on layer by layer. No one wants to send me fresh herbs. Alas, I can only wait for me to grow up a little bit, and in the future, I will find those medicinal farmers from all over the world to record it. Teacher Mo didn't think much, and almost immediately believed her. Only Keek didn't make a sound at all. This is completely the host's excuse. She was addicted to bringing down the king of Yazhu before, and he didn't say anything because her life was not guaranteed. But now she's so addicted to various cases that she can't remember anything. If it wasn't for the fact that she and Bai Shan had spent too many points before, I'm afraid she would still be reluctant to include horses, because she has less money. Man Bao firmly refused to admit this, but she also seemed to feel Keek's resentment, so she paid points for Keek to print the information, and promised, tomorrow I will go to the palace to give the queen an injection, and then I'll buy some flowers and plants with unicorn for your records. Keek responded without any fuss. Man Bao took out the information that was printed and bound into a book. Seeing that it had no name on it, he picked up a pen and added 4 words on it: acupuncture and anesthesia. Man Bao looked at it and asked Keek, look, does this look like an ancient book? It's not like, have you seen such a new ancient book, Keek said, and the handwriting on the cover is yours at first glance. Man Bao then remembered that he had made a mistake, and said, oh, forget it, I just read this book myself anyway. Man Bao logged out of the system, holding the book and planning to go to the yard to bask in the sun while reading, because the weather was really cold at the moment, and it was chilly in the house, so he quickly basked in the sun while the sun was still good. As a result, she prepared the pen, ink, paper, and inkstone on the table in the yard, intending to take some notes while reading. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang ran back from school. Bai Shan made an appointment with Man Bao directly. Are you going for a horse race? Man Bao was slightly moved. She glanced at the books on the table and struggled. Where are you going? There are people outside. We can run around the street, go to Early Lane to say goodbye to grandmother and mother, and then go down the river and turn around again. Bai Shan saw that she was moved, and said, "You came back yesterday. I just said that the saddle sent by Mrs. Han is ready to use, and I will put it on today. Don't you want to try it?" Man Bao put away his things and said, "Okay, let's go for a run." But she found a reason for herself. "I read a book for a long time this afternoon, just to give my eyes a rest." Xiang Mingxiu, who felt that Man Bao had slept in the house for a long time. So the three put down the book basket, put away the things, and ran towards the stable with their whips. Daji had already prepared horses for them, and he also led a tall mature horse out to wait. "This is their carriage horse." The four led out the horses, the three little ones got on the horses one after another, and Daji rode at the back to watch them. Bai Shan and the three of them all learned horses when they were in Qilai village, and naturally they also ran, but running in the village is different from running in the city. There were not so many people in the village. When everyone was learning horses, it was autumn again. At that time, there was no food in the fields, so everyone could let go and run. After the winter wheat was planted, everyone ran with a little restraint. Except for the wheat fields, they were allowed to go to other places. But now when I go to the street, there are people everywhere. Now, when everyone goes back from school and get off work to prepare for cooking, there are a lot of people on the street shopping for food. The excited mood of the three people stagnated when they reached the street. They could only sit on the horse and hold the horse, let it run forward in small steps, and then it was even more upside down. Going fast, Man Bao thought it might be better to let it go slowly. Obviously, Bai Shan thought so too, so he pulled the horse and started to let it walk slowly. Seeing Bai Erlang running a long distance in front of him, he hurriedly shouted, "Bai Er, please slow down. Well, we'll be separated in a while." Bai Erlang looked back at them, only to realize that the three of them were far behind. He was unhappy and called out, "You guys are too slow, hurry up, there will be fewer people by the river." No wonder. The four of them rode to the riverside and saw that there were people along the bank, which was not as good as the street, because the street was at least wide enough, and there were lanes, but not here. So they couldn't even turn around and go back the other way, so they could only follow the crowd down, and then went to Early Lane with a frustrated look. Seeing that they were so disappointed, Mrs. Lu couldn't help laughing. She stretched out her hand and pulled Man Bao and said, "You guys, what's the fun in running a horse to the suburbs, or to a race course?" Man Bao said, "We don't have enough time to leave the city. Then go back next time after taking a rest. Why rush at this moment?" Zheng Shi brought a plate of snacks for them to eat, and said with a smile, "We are saying that we will go to Suandu temple for dipping together after you rest." This Man Bao is familiar. Every winter, her mother takes her to Taoist temples for dipping. She nodded repeatedly, "Okay, let's go together." Bai Shan and Bai Erlang also have no opinion. Satisfied, Zheng began to plan what to bring to the Taoist temple that day. Mrs. Lu asked them to have dinner here, and sent a servant to Changqing Lane to talk to Mr. Zhuang. Early Lane and Changqing Lane are not far from each other, and it only takes a quarter of an hour if they walk fast. Bai Shan and the others had to make a big circle to enjoy the horseback riding, but it took 3/4 of an hour to arrive. The Zheng family didn't quite understand what they were plotting. Seeing that Manbao was still wearing old clothes from last year, her wrists were almost showing, obviously she had grown taller, so she pulled her into the room, took out 2 sets of clothes she had made and gestured on her body, laughing. Said, "This is the clothes I made for you. Are the clothes you made at home thinner?" Manbao smiled embarrassedly, "My sister-in-law doesn't know that the capital city is colder than the village, so all I asked you to bring are autumn clothes." Zheng felt that she was too young to take care of herself, so she nodded with satisfaction after comparing both sets of clothes. "It's just right, no need to change it, I'll wrap it up and you'll take it back in a while." Man Bao asked curiously, Aunt Zheng, aren't Bai Shan and Bai Er? They also have them. They have already been handed over to the servants. You are a girl's family, and you are different from them, she said. How can your clothes pass the hands of those servants? Zheng Shi happily took out a box, pulled Man Bao to sit down in front of him, touched her tweezers and said, girls should be more refined, look at you, you are about to turn 13, why? Or comb your hair like this. Come on, let me help you get a nicer hair. See you tomorrow. I especially want to send you a photo. My keyboard photo is missing a keycap. I am used to pressing shift with my left hand, so now I can only press the axis. Lost keycaps will be mailed back. So, don't dismantle the keyboard, and don't dismantle other things.